One of the interesting things you stumble on when ancient civilizations are one of your areas of fascination is what is taken seriously during different time periods. With the myriad messages our brains encounter on a daily basis, which are the ones we lend credence to? What signs or omens are the ones we take note of, if we do so at all? Where do we draw wisdom or new ideas from? The dreams we experience while sleeping are a fascinating example of this shift. The Enlightenment period swung the pendulum toward putting more credence in things that we can measure, quantify, and replicate in consistent ways. And this was a good and necessary thing at the time. We were still burning witches at the beginning of the Enlightenment period. We needed some rationale. But this focus on measurable phenomena means that anything that didn't fall into that category got pushed into the shadows and devalued. And the truth, of course, is that some events really are not replicable in a double-blind scientific study. Dreams, and particularly potent ones, and the messages they contain, fall into that category. I grew up in the 1980s, which means some of the more recent breakthroughs in neurology, psychology, and behavioral science had not yet happened when I was in formation as a person. As a vivid dreamer, I remember being told repeatedly that whatever I had experienced while unconscious was only a dream and to pay it no mind. It's actually a little funny to think of it now. My sister and I are very close in age, and we are both vivid dreamers. We also both have a condition called REM intrusion. REM, sometimes pronounced REM, stands for rapid eye movement. This is the phase of sleep when dreaming most frequently occurs. Intrusion, of course, means that there is a boundary problem. For my sister and I, our brains sometimes fail the gear shift between sleeping and waking. Our bodies essentially wake up and start moving while we are dreaming. So growing up, I lived in a house where there were two little girls sleepwalking, having conversations, and occasionally wandering out and turning on the television at 2 o'clock in the morning, all while completely unconscious. And my poor parents, of course, were trying to behave as though all of this was perfectly normal and nothing to worry about, because REM intrusion was not a diagnosis in 1985. As adults, our REM intrusion levels are not high enough to justify strong medical intervention. Most nights do not include an incident, thank gods. But it does mean occasionally we do things like throw an entire nightstand across a room or wake up standing in the hallway. At various points in time, I have tried various medications and supplements to try to reduce how active my dreaming is. And I found out something a bit odd. I missed my dreams. Even though they're sometimes uncomfortable, I don't feel quite right if I'm not dreaming. I began to realize that my dream life, even as peculiar as it can be, is part of who I am and part of how I contextualize the world and my lived experience of it. And this brings us back to what different cultures take seriously in different time periods. My own area of historical fascination is ancient Scandinavia and Germanic Europe from the Bronze Age up until about the medieval era. I think as someone with a slightly unusual dream experience, finding out that dreams were viewed as incredibly important to those cultures was a bit of relief. Whether contemporary thinking has supported it or not, dreams have been incredibly important to me. My dreams have predicted the future, helped me understand the root problems in situations I've encountered, and perhaps most importantly, they have been the way some of my beloved dead have communicated with me after death. And in multiple arenas, we are beginning to realize that civilizations and cultures once considered unevolved or backwards were in fact right about many things. And I suspect that dreams may fall into this category as well. For thousands of years in cultures across the world, dreams carried a good deal of importance. One consistent theme in the written records of ancient Scandinavia and Germanic Europe is the power of dreams to predict the future. In Njal's saga, a woman dreams about a plant growing on the turf roof of her home being a threat to the family, and she begs the men of the household to remove the plant, and they laugh off her concern. Later in the story, the house is attacked and the enemy tries to set the roof on fire. It fails to catch until that one plant growing on the roof catches fire, and the conflagration then spreads. In the saga of the Volsungs, marriage, betrayal, and death are all predicted in dreams. Dreams as a method of communication with non-human or non-living beings appear in the written attestations as well. In the saga of the Icelanders, a man named Björn dreams of a land spirit who offers to help him. Björn accepts, and a strange billy goat joins his flock. Björn soon grows wealthy with an abundant herd. And this use of dreams to foreshadow events or support otherworldly communication only works as a plot device if a culture already places importance on dreams and connects them with those qualities. This is one of those perspectives you have to cultivate when you're looking at older written records, is not just what the story says, what does the story tell you about the culture that told the story? The importance of dreams in ancient Scandinavia was pronounced enough that the guidance of the wise was sought to interpret dreams that felt significant. As in modern dream work, there was an understanding that not all dreams carried a message. Indeed, seeking potent or prophetic dreams was a part of life when people felt like they needed guidance outside the waking world. Techniques like sleeping on grave mounds or while wrapped in special animal hides were used to induce prophetic dreams. Modern science places importance on dreams as well. They help us build memory. Most dreaming primarily involves the prefrontal cortex of the brain, but vivid or unusual dreams include deep brain structures like the amygdala and the hippocampus. The hippocampus in particular is involved in the process of transforming short-term memories into long-term memories, so it is absolutely vital to cognition as a result. There was a study released in 2010 from UC Berkeley, and interestingly, it found that a reduction in REM sleep, or less dreaming, influences our ability to understand complex emotions in daily life, an essential feature of human social functioning. One of the many roles of dreams is to support emotional processing. That link is so powerful that severe REM sleep deprivation is increasingly correlated to the development of mental disorders. So paying attention to and cultivating dreams is useful whether you believe they can predict the future or not. They serve as a vehicle for communication. We all have practical uses for good brain function and understanding emotions, both our own and those of others. In a chronically overworked and underslept culture, emphasizing dreaming can feel like a tall order. There are some easy steps to get started. The first step is to evaluate and improve your sleep in whatever way you can. One interesting thing that happened with a member of my own family was the intersection of dreaming and sleep apnea. The person in question didn't and does not snore. And as it turns out, you can have sleep apnea without that telltale symptom. If your body is constantly waking up a little bit in order to restore respiration, you rarely sleep deeply enough for REM sleep to occur. My family member eventually got treatment for their sleep apnea, and they almost immediately started dreaming. So step one is just to make sure you can enter REM sleep. For most adults, only 20% of our time unconscious is REM sleep, so it's already a limited resource. This is one of those interesting things that declines over the course of our age. For children, it's about 50%, which is also why my sister and I had much more, let's call them nighttime incidents when we were children than we do now. It's already a limited resource, so we want to cultivate it. Most of you already know the guidelines around good sleep hygiene, but I'm going to list them briefly here anyway, just because our culture makes these difficult to practice, and we could all use a reminder. So, keep a consistent sleep schedule when possible. Go to bed and wake up at roughly the same time every day. A wind down period before bed where we put away those demon devices we carry in our pockets is useful. We want low light for this. This means no screens and try to avoid highly stimulating reading material. I'm sure I'm not the only person where if I go to bed with a good book, I am not actually going to go to sleep. I will just tell myself one more chapter until 3 o'clock in the morning. Likewise, avoid stimulants like alcohol and caffeine in the couple hours before bed. Foods that can cause indigestion, things that are greasy, very spicy, or heavy, can also negatively impact sleep quality if we eat them too close to bedtime. Try to sleep in a dark, quiet room that stays fairly cool. One of the interesting things I learned about sleep health is that we sleep better in far cooler temperatures than I think we realize. Recommendation is actually between 60 and 70 degrees, which is a little tough here in Western Maryland in August, but we'll do what we can. And try to get out into natural daylight during the day. It helps set our sleep patterns. The parts of the brain that are used for recording new memories, as opposed to those that are used for processing existing memories, are not as active during sleep. This is why it's often hard to remember dreams. We aren't turning them into memories while they're happening. That part of the brain is off. However, there is a significant body of evidence that indicates that as we begin focusing more on recording and paying attention to our dreams, we begin to experience stronger dreams. It's an interesting example of that which is fed increases. Many people keep a dream journal. This is a notebook that lives right next to the bed. Upon waking, lie still for a moment and remember everything you can about your dreams. That 2 to 3 minutes where we're right on the edge of that liminal space that was mentioned earlier, this is when you have a chance to remember. Again, your short-term memory wasn't recording. Usually if you can latch onto one image or symbol, you'll start to remember more of the dream. This then allows that part of your brain that records memories to step back into the process. It's awakened up now. So write down all the parts of your dreams you can remember. They don't need to make sense or be in linear order. Some of my dream journal entries are like coffee cup, road, oak tree. Okay. Many times the important part of a dream is a particular symbol, conversation, or emotion. That potent message is held inside a story that may or may not be related to the core message. Write down what you can remember without worrying too much about narrative flow. It does not have to make sense. Additionally, if your writing, like mine, is atrocious, consider using a simple voice recorder app on your phone instead. If you are able to, waking up naturally or shifting your alarm clock over to a daylight alarm or another type of clock that gently eases you into consciousness is also helpful. Being jarred suddenly out of sleep tends to negatively impact dream recall. We don't spend as much time in that drifty liminal place where we have a chance to remember the symbols we saw. Now, there are some supplements that seem to enhance dreaming, but as always, you want to be careful with any substance you introduce to your body and talk to your medical professionals as needed. Melatonin is a hormone that supports deep, restful sleep. Melatonin supplements are designed for short-term use and can help us enter deep sleep longer. They result in greater likelihood of REM sleep cycles. On the other side of that is mugwort. This is a perennial herb native to parts of Europe and Asia. It is strongly credited with increasing the vividness of dreams and can be purchased as either a tea or a tincture. Dream tea blends generally contain mugwort as one of the primary ingredients. Those blends frequently include other sleep-supporting herbs like kava, valerian, chamomile, catnip, and lemon balm. And a warm cup of tea about a half an hour to an hour before bed is a lovely way to wind down. And one last practical technique. Intention setting does seem to help people remember their dreams. So as you're drifting off, simply tell yourself you are going to remember your dreams. Some people make a point of remembering a previous dream or thinking of something they wish to dream about in great detail as they're falling asleep. My own experience of being alive is that our brains are just so interesting and capable of so much more than we've been able to prove with research. As always, science only understands what science can see, and there remain many areas where science simply does not yet have the mechanism of perception. But science is not the only deep well of wisdom from which we can draw inspiration. The folklore of so many cultures emphasizes the importance of dreaming. So much of modern life involves trying to wring answers from the unknown, to make educated guesses and predictions about the future so that we can make good choices for ourselves and the world we're trying to build. The Enlightenment period inspired many wonderful things, but some of what was pushed into the shadow may not be as irrelevant as we thought. we're willing to lend credence to a good deal of speculation from external sources. What if one of the best sources of information and occasional glimpses of the future has been here all along? In a time when so much feels so uncertain, perhaps the inner compass of our own dreams is worth calibrating and learning to follow.